Hey there guys, TPC Guy here with the roundup of the news in tech and gaming industries for the week. And the top news this week is definitely Google Stadia. It has finally launched, and as we were kind of expecting, it was not really the smoothest launch and not really the greatest service either. For those of you unaware, Google Stadia is a game streaming service. This means that in theory you do not need to have a console or a PC to play games online. You do need a very good internet connection, and while they are not the first ones to try this kind of streaming service, there's a few others from Nvidia and other competitors, but they are the most publicized lately because, well, it's Google, they're everywhere, and they're pretty damn big. Some issues were already expected, like for example the insane amount of data that you need to have if your data plan on your internet connection is in some way limited. Then you are pretty much out of luck because it takes an enormous amount of data to play per hour if you want to measure it like that. And you also need a very, very good internet connection in terms of speed to be able to play at any decent resolution or frame rate. Other issues that have been criticized about it in the past few months are, well, the kind of plan that you have to follow. It was kind of expected when it was first announced. It would be sort of like a Netflix for games, that you would be able to pay a subscription monthly or whatever, and you would have access to a library of games that you would just play whatever you want for no extra cost, or at least not a big extra cost. What actually happens is that you have to get the Stadia controller that comes with a Chromecast Ultra for you to plug into your devices and being able to stream from the Google servers, or stream the game that is. And on top of that, you still have to pay the games at pretty much full price, like exactly full price. There's no sort of discount for you not actually owning the game and only streaming it. And this does give some issues considering Google's track record of just axing features and services that they don't seem to deem profitable. Like, for example, Google Plus is a fine example. All these questions aside, that are more general questions about the service itself, in terms of the technical details, there are also some very pressing issues that have happened around this launch. Like, for example, the controllers that were supposed to be wireless, apparently they are not completely wireless in every case and only in specific use cases because they have no confidence that the product that the controller they are sending you is capable of good wireless connection in every case. Then there's also the latency between the game servers and you playing, which kind of introduces some input lag, and you're not really the actions on the screen are not really matching the timing that you are pressing them on your controller buttons. So obviously that's an issue for games like, for example, Mortal Kombat, that is one of the games featured on Stadia. Speaking of games featured on Stadia, they also only have about 20 games or something supported right now. That's actually a lot more than expected because up until last week it was only expected to have around the 10 games or something. So that's also extremely limited right now what you can actually play. That aside, they also have experienced other technical issues like stuttering, freezes, these things happening regardless of what resolution or frame rate you're trying to play on. So it's a very, well, let's say convoluted launch, and it kind of feels like it's in a beta stage and the first adopters are all just beta testers instead of being the actual real launch. So we'll have to see how it evolves from now on. But for now, it does not seem like a very compelling service, and I would definitely not rely on it and get rid of my PC or console to then go play on Stadia. AMD has confirmed to several news outlets this week that the Zen 3 architecture will be an entirely new architecture as opposed to just a refresh or improvement over Zen 2. They claim that while Zen 2 delivered a 15% IPC increase over the previous Zen generation, that increase should be even higher this time around with Zen 3, considering it is a completely new architecture instead of just a general refresh and improvement of an existing architecture, coupled with the 7nm process, which should give us some pretty impressive results, both in IPC and in clock speeds and performance upgrades. They also claim that they will be trying to follow the old TikTok sort of release that Intel has been following, had been following, let's say, until some years ago, where they will try to alternate between node shrink from in this case like they did to the 7 nanometer, and then a new architecture on the next talk of the clock, let's call it, on the next release cycle with a new architecture, and then followed once again by a node shrink and so on until they are unable to keep up that pace. While this is all great in theory, it remains to be seen if it is actually feasible as the nodes get smaller and smaller and more difficult to develop. We're already at the 5 nanometer right now, I believe, that TSMC is developing, and the lower you get, the smaller you get, the more difficult it is to actually continue that shrinking process. So this whole TikTok architecture kind of thing that they are trying to do might not be completely sustainable in the very long run, but in the midterm it is quite promising, and let's see if they actually can keep it up. Because if the gains are supposed to be bigger in Zen 3 than they were in Zen 2, and those are already quite monumental, then it's kind of exciting to see what's going to coming out of that. It's also worth mentioning that Zen 3 is supposed to be coming out still next year, and we have heard literally nothing from Intel about their plans for the next generation. If it's going to be 10 nanometer, it's probably will, but we have heard no leaks, no information, no expected release dates. And if they will have nothing to compete in 2020, and then Zen 3 hits, and it's even better than Zen 2, then yeah, I'm not going to say they'll be in trouble because they're this giant monolithic empire and they have their bags full of cash that can easily survive that. But I do see AMD biting into their market share even harder than they are right now if they have nothing to answer to Zen 3. Speaking of biting into their market share, new researches have been released about the market shares, this time in South Korean markets, also DIY, much like the German example that we've had in the past. DIY is the easiest market segment to actually analyze and get some solid numbers on, and AMD is reaching 53% market share for the first time in history. They are outselling Intel once again, and we do have some nice graphs that are actually quite difficult to read due to them being in Korean, obviously, but the trend is very clear. Examples like this make it a lot easier to read, although this one is from the German Mindfactory site, so it's not the Korean example that I mentioned, but the numbers are there easily to see that 78% for AMD in this case, 22% for Intel in October 2019, with the 3600 alone basically matching up with the entire Intel stack up. Also, if you are seriously on a budget, they have also just launched an Athlon 3000G, which features 2 cores, 4 threads. It runs at 3.5 GHz base clock. It's Zen Plus 12 nanometers, so it's not really the most recent Zen 2 architecture. However, it is even overclockable, and it has been overclocked up to 4 GHz, and it comes with a cooler included. And yes, I know it's not really a high end, but keep in mind this chip is going to be costing around the $49 mark. So if you're on a really serious tight budget and you just really need a working computer, it even comes with a cooler for $49. I mean, you can't get a better deal from that anywhere, really. So yeah, there's also very interesting extreme budget options coming to AMD right now. AMD has also recently shed some light on the best core versus preferred core that is being kind of a hot topic on the Ryzen 3000 lineup, with Ryzen Master and other applications like HWinfo and the such kind of conflicting with the information that we get from the Windows API on what are the best cores, preferred cores, and what kind of cores are used by the system to run specifically taxing applications and threads, so that, well, your applications will run faster, better, you name it. There was a bit of a conflict between what one application said and what other application said, and AMD has now clarified that that has to do with a sort of a rotation that the Ryzen management kind of does to keep a thread on the best cores while avoiding sending them to different core complexes or different chiplets, because as you know, the Ryzen processors have different chiplets in each CPU, and if you were to switch it from chiplet to chiplet while the thread is running, then you have latency issues, and it will just negate any sort of improvement that rotation will do. Now that rotation happens so that when the thread is running for an extended period of time, if it's running on one core, that core is going to be getting hotter and hotter, so it's better to jump it to another core that will be running cooler to both improve thermal management, improve efficiency, and as well as the frequency that it is able to achieve because of the whole temperature. Now, if you were to throw it into a core that, while being good, is on another core complex on the chip, then that would just negate any advantage because of the latency on the Infinity Fabric, and actually, well, it would probably make it slower than it would have been staying on the same core complex. What this means is that Ryzen Master and the Ryzen API are basically sidestepping this issue by giving Windows the wrong information, or lying to Windows about which cores are the best, so that Windows will not try to put them on cores that are on a different core complex. So this does explain a bit why the informations have discrepancies in them between what you see in Windows and what you see in Ryzen Master. Now, this was a kind of simplistic explanation. The article that I read does go into further detail, but it's a bit more technical that I don't want to get in here. So yeah, at least you guys do have an idea why your CPUs are giving you different information depending on what program you're using to watch it with. One of the last handy topics for today is a bit on the rumor side of things, and it is that we can possibly expect Navi 2, or well, Navi 20, whatever you want to call it, announced at CES earlier next year, so in January, and it will be RDNA 2 Navi 20 GPUs that would possibly be announced. A bit more less likely, maybe previewed a little bit, and then aiming for a release around summertime, much like the Zen 2 architecture and RDNA 1 with the Radeon 5700 series that we have had this year. We could be seeing a repeat that for next year as far as release cycle goes. This does not really provide much new information, and take it all with a huge grain of salt. It is also mentioning that there was possibly RTX 2080 Ti Super involved from Nvidia's side, because supposedly their Ampere next generation is a bit delayed towards the end of the year, and they want to have something to compete with AMD. So it's all rumors within rumors, and nothing of this is confirmed. And well, I am only mentioning it because of, well, kind of hope that it is true, and we should all be hopeful, because that would mean better competition, better pricing, yada yada. You know how this all works, and you've seen it in the AMD versus Intel in the CPU market, that the prices just go down for the consumers, and that's just better for everyone, really. These GPUs from the AMD should be featuring hardware-based ray tracing. Even if it's not strictly necessary, it probably helps. We've seen with the release of ray tracing benchmarks that any card can really run ray tracing, just some are better at it than others. And while hardware-based ray tracing might probably help, in some cases it seems like it doesn't, considering the 5700 XT is beating the RTX 2060 at ray tracing, which is something I was honestly not expecting, but well, the numbers don't lie. As far as actual news goes, this is the bulk of it. I have a couple of other topics to touch, like the rumor that Nvidia will be using multi-GPU architecture, or well, I should rather say multi-chip, so kind of chiplet design, like AMD uses for Ryzen. Nvidia is supposed to be trying to experiment with that for the next generation of graphics cards, not Ampere, not the RTX 3000 series, but the supposed 4000, if that's what it's going to be called, that would be coming after that, that they are playing with the idea of doing them in a multi-chiplet design like that. Probably when I say playing with the idea, if that is true, they already have it in development, most likely, because you don't do that sort of thing overnight, or not even over a year. It takes years to develop that sort of thing. So if it is true, it's already in progress. But again, rumor, nothing confirmed, and all of that. It is also been reported that the AMD B550 motherboards and Intel 400 series are ready for release. The B450 are basically, well, as you could expect, a cheaper variant of the X570, with also some features cut down from them. However, considering there's some very cheap 570 down there, that you can find online around the $100 mark for X570 for the entry level, the B550 either need to be priced down a lot or not really have a whole lot cut out of them. So it's a bit of a weird market niche. We'll have to see when they come out. It's an information that has been provided by a Biostar executive, so pretty reliable, I suppose, but again, no actual release dates and no actually product previews or anything. That pretty much sums up what I wanted to touch on this week. Hope it has been useful for you guys to keep up with the latest news in the tech and or gaming businesses. Give a like on the comment to the video if there's something you'd like to say, or if you just like to give the video a little bit of a popularity boost with the YouTube algorithm, because it really helps. If you would like to see the channel keep growing, we could really use some extra subscribers, so hit that button, click on the bell notification so you have a little pop-up when our videos goes live, and you won't miss a thing. So this has been Epic PC Guy, hope I'll see you in the next video, have fun, and I'll see you later.